gas ourselves up, but we short on breath. Talking about we eating, but who we really cooking. Dreaming about greens, but ain't nobody looking. No land, no acres, no seeds in the ground. When the hunger hits, who's gonna be around? We starving every day, and it just ain't the food. Feeding the hood garbage, got 'em acting a fool. We flossing with rides, stunting with chains, but these bars we spitting just bring more pain. We guilty as hell, preaching all these lies, selling debt to the kids, and we acting surprised. We commercialize the pain, broadcast the grief, tell the youth to hustle, but hide the beef. We glorify the trap, invite them to the flames, just like Reagan brought the crack on planes. Back in the 80s when the streets got soaked, my people, my brothers, all got choked. Reagan said no trades, but we know the deal. He left us in the dirt, man, that shit was real. I was just a shorty watching it unfold, old enough to see how we got sold. War on drugs, but it was war on us. Cops on our necks, no love, no trust. They labeled us thugs, beasts on the block, made us kiss the pavement while they cleaned our clock. Prison became business thanks to Reagan's game. Free labor is the truth in America's name. Slavery's dead, man. That's just a word. Read the 13th Amendment, it's still absurd. They lock us in cages, serving time for life. Double digits for wisdom, cutting sharp like a knife. I'm here to say, the chains in the air, it's time we break free, start showing we care. No more flexing for nothing, no more selling out. It's time to rise up. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. And this is the Urban Conservative presents Disenfranchised Voters. I don't know why I put voters, but it's supposed to be voter. And today I'm going to be talking about, so on Mondays for like the next 2 months, I'm going to do about Ron Edwards, right? Because he had 7 solutions. And I'm going to start today with education because it's really big that I'm doing that because I really want to do education. And because I feel like if you don't have the education, you don't have nothing. So that's where I want to start with. And but before I get into all that, I have Prince Riley, Mac Turner, Mac Irv, Black people.
Yeah. Underground railroad, them stars lead the slaves at night.
You're the king? And you never told us?
Black people, we ain't just black people. Yeah. I bet they want us gone for good. They used to sell us for the goods, yeah. Cause we just black people, yeah. It's people sinning every day, it ain't just black people, yeah. We ain't just black people, yeah. I bet they want us gone for good. They used to sell us for the goods, yeah. Cause we just black people, yeah. It's people killing every day, it ain't just Northside baby engraved with a needle. Put us in grace, get away is illegal. I cannot bow to the face of an eagle. Home of the brave is a grave for my people. Drowning in 10,000 legs full of evil. Black on black crime, no excuse to be lethal. They take a brother, they take brother me too. I lost a brother from crime in the streets too. I do not care to compare, it ain't equal. Black man arrested and he lost his life. Won't be the same if the skin color changed. White man that shot up the church still alive. Philando got shot in his girlfriend face. She never got to be called his wife. Police that shot him beat that case. He got to make it back home to his wife, yeah. What's worse than dying from something that was supposed to protect your life? How would my mama feel knowing I was the next to die? They used to put shackles on our feet, feel like I'm next in line. Yeah, I go crazy for my black people. Black people, we ain't just black people, yeah. I bet they want us gone for good. They used to sell us for the goods, yeah. Cause we just black people, yeah. It's people sinning every day, it ain't just black people, yeah. We ain't just black people, yeah. I bet they want us gone for good. They used to sell us for the goods, yeah. Cause we just black people, yeah. It's people killing every day, it ain't just black people.
They rather see us when we black and blue. Hands on their weapons when they spot us as we passing through. No matter who, a black woman got too much attitude. So they say, girl, speak your truth, I can't be mad at you. I see reflections of myself at 9 and 10 when I see a group of kids same color as my skin. Back when the only thing I worried about was recess with my friends. When nobody ever told me all that fun was bound to end. You can't be black and be a kid, playing cops and robbers. You can't be toying with your life like that, them cops and robbers. You can't be black while wearing hoodies, or you Trayvon Martin. You can't be black while in your car you might be Floyd. I mean God, cause we just black people.
We ain't just black people, yeah. I bet they want us gone for good. They used to sell us for the goods, yeah. Cause we just black people, yeah. It's people sinning every day, it ain't just black people, yeah. We ain't just black people, yeah. I bet they want us gone for good. They used to sell us for the goods, yeah. Cause we just black people, yeah. It's people killing every day, it ain't just
was
black
never
people.
gonna change and it just stay the same. Another black man slain, I know exactly where the place to blame. I just get to praying when I feel this pain. But the praying gon' keep us out those chains or out the aim when those bullets spraying. They couldn't understand when Cap kneel, but you see when it's Cop kneel. And he was sick and tired of seeing blacks killed. I marched for Philando, I protested for Jamal. I watched the news to see the verdicts and they both got off. Hardest anxiety inside of me, I can't control my thoughts. How you live in the boondocks but come patrol my block. I feel helpless, I can't help it. It's not a trend because the color of our skin. These cops convinced we're all convicted felons, and all lives matters a lot. Not just being black where I'm from, you're 13 times more likely to die. They say this shit ain't gonna end until it's eye for an eye. For my black people, I'm ready to ride. Let's go.
Black people, we ain't just black people, yeah. I bet they want us gone for good. They used to sell us for the goods, yeah. Cause we just black people, yeah. It's people sinning every day, it ain't just black people, yeah. We ain't
Black people. Hey, what up? What up? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, I want to get into education today because that is a big one, and I feel like in Minnesota, and that is something that we really need to talk about because, you know, these people are getting paid all this money, but yet our education system is crappy. It's not, you know what I'm saying, like one of the best. So before I really get into Ron Edwards and the 7 solutions, and the first one is education. So I'm going to talk about this because it is the education part. And I want to show you, I think people are really going to be shocked when they hear some of this because I definitely was.
All right, as some school districts see budget cuts and others have turned to voters to approve tax hikes, 5 Investigates is digging into the hefty bonuses, monthly car allowances, and big salaries for those in charge, superintendents. Investigative reporter Ryan Raish found some eye-popping perks most of us would dream of.
These are the contracts for every superintendent in the biggest 30 school districts in the state. These are not readily available. We had to do a public records request, in some cases pay, to answer our key questions and probably yours at home. So let's dive in. The first thing that jumped off the page to me are the creative ways school districts describe what most of us would call a bonus. Beyond base pay, I found performance pay, retention pay, longevity pay, even wellness pay. They all basically mean the same thing. Tens of thousands of dollars on top of the hefty salaries superintendents already earn. So how much are we talking? Well, the top 3 earners in the 30 biggest school districts in the state go to Minnetonka, Anoka Hennepin, and Osseo. But Dr. David Law in Minnetonka takes home the most, just shy of $300,000 a year. But that's on top of his performance pay, up to 20%, another $60,000 a year. But wait, there's more. Dr. Law also earns $1,000 a month for his car. We found that monthly car stipend is a common one. Out of the 30 superintendent contracts we reviewed, 19 of them receive extra money for their car, ranging from $400 a month to $1,200 extra per month.
The compensation question is important. It's a fair question.
Dr. Deb Henton is a former superintendent and the current executive director of the Minnesota Association of School Administrators.
But what's most important is, can we afford to not have high-quality leaders leading our school districts? And the answer to that, everybody would agree, is no.
And it's clear districts roll out the red carpet to get and keep their leaders. Here are some other notable perks. The superintendents in Minneapolis and St. Paul are among those who get a certain amount of days for writing, consulting, and lecturing. And look at all these superintendents who get so-called longevity or retention pay, up to $20,000 a year for some, if they stay put long enough. And another popular perk we found, extra money to earn your doctorate degree. John Megas in Duluth has that clause in his contract.
Out of all the superintendents I reached out to, you're the only one that agreed to sit down and talk with us. So I think you deserve some extra credit on that part.
Sure. No, I think it's important for us to really explain the rationale of why this is an important investment in education.
I know nobody likes to talk about their paycheck, but since it's public dollars, it's fair game, of course. Yours, you're sitting around $214,000, as we talked. Make the case for me. Why do you earn that?
Well, I think, first of all, the job has a lot of responsibility, a lot of scope of responsibility. There's responsibility for student outcomes. It's a very political job. And then also, when you think about the return on investment, it's a very small percentage of the whole district budget.
That overall budget in Duluth sits around $185 million a year. Megas' salary is among the lowest of the top 30 we reviewed, but still significantly higher than an average teacher.
But I love the position. It's great, and I would be interested even if it paid less, but it's after 30 years of working really hard, I feel like I deserve the salary that I do.
There's no debate that superintendents have important jobs with a lot of pressure and scrutiny, but there's also no debate that many of these districts are running thin on money, some facing budget cuts and others seeing new tax levies. All of it leaving these big money contracts under the microscope. Now, those monthly car allowances make it clear that the money is intended for the business use of personal cars, like paying for trips between buildings within a district. Now, the average pay for the top 30 superintendents that we reviewed sits at more than $240,000. Nationwide, that average sits around $170,000, Lindsay.
Well, Ryan, it was good to see a superintendent sit down and talk to you.
It was.
It's a very important job. It's nice to hear from their words. You talked about some of these bonuses. What in the world is a longevity bonus?
It's an interesting one. It's a popular one, actually. Longevity pay for most of these folks who have it in their contract kicks in after a certain number of years that they stay on the job. And there's some research that shows the longer a superintendent stays in place, the better the outcome. So it's a question of whether the school boards want to kind of sweeten the pot and make that part of the offer.
It's interesting because we have seen through just our work in journalism, seeing superintendents kind of
jump ship
around
quickly, and we also see the other side, and some stay for a long time.
All right.
Damn, that's crazy. You know, there's so many people that make all this kind of money, but our community is still crappy. I don't understand that. And it's like the kids, what I don't get, that's a lot of money though. The top 30 superintendents made an average of $214,000 a year. But what do our kids get? Well, you know, that's the crazy thing because they make as much as judges do. They make as much as judges do. And that's why I really wanted to talk about Ron Edwards, because I felt like there was a lot when it came to Ron, and I feel like a lot of people maybe didn't know about. I definitely didn't know about him, maybe not by name, but I definitely have never met him. But he's such a. I watched a lot of videos and like Black Focus, and I read his book, The Minneapolis Story, and I feel like to me it's he was really working on these solutions. And I always feel like if you go back and you read his book, if you go read his column, or you look at his, I don't know if I should call it a podcast or, but he used to do weekly episodes, you know, and it was named Black Focus. And I feel like America has got, especially when it comes to Minneapolis, we have got so far away from that. And it's like, why? I don't understand it. It's like, why are we forgetting like what we came here to fight for? You know, and that's why I will never understand that. Because it's like people always say, oh, we're fighting for you. We're fighting for you. No, you're not. You're fighting for other people because that's what makes money. That's what makes money. It's not about, oh, we're going to eradicate this or we're going to help get rid of it. No, you know, I will tell you like this. When I got into it in 2020, I wasn't expecting us especially in 2025, to see most of the people on the DFL and progressive side, because that's where I started at. I was never into politics until 2020. Before that, I voted for, the first time I ever voted in an election was for Obama, and that was because he was black. That's because he was black. And then the second time that I voted for Trump. I'll be honest, that didn't make me a Republican, but I voted for Trump because I couldn't get behind Hillary's that it could be a day before you can give birth and you can get an abortion. No, I wasn't okay with that. I was nowhere near okay with that because she believed in full-term abortion. And I'm not okay with that. So that's one reason why I voted for Trump. 2020, Biden. Oh, wait, no, I couldn't vote. Nope, I couldn't vote. Nope, I couldn't vote because the crazy ass thing to me is like, so when 2020 popped off, COVID, George Floyd, that summer, I was charged with voter fraud because I went to an event by the voters, women. I know they were going to give me an award and all that, but they ended up taking away because I ended up calling them out about some shit. And it's like, damn, does anybody really want to get ahead? Or are you more about fame and clout? Because it can't be. That's why I can't understand how people can't fight for just one thing. Y'all want to say at first, because when I met a lot of these motherfuckers, they was Black Lives Matter. It wasn't about, this is the thing about it's because it was black gays. It wasn't gay blacks. It wasn't trans blacks. It was always black trans. But now it's totally the opposite. They don't put the black in front anymore because they don't care about that. All they care about is that they want to get seen and appreciated and make people. That's the one thing that pisses me off, right? Because this morning I was in a debate about genders. We have two genders. What is a gender reveal? You don't go up there and you be like, oh, I'm hoping for a trans baby. No, you hope for a boy or girl. When I started elementary school, two genders. When I started junior high, two genders. When I went to high school, two genders. Some college, two genders. Now, all of a sudden, 2020, y'all motherfuckers talking about there's 72 motherfucking genders. And it's like, wait, hold up, because there's only two genders. God created Adam and Eve. Not Adam and Steve, and not Amanda and Eve. You choose to be that way. I'm not there. I don't have anything fucking against it. I don't have nothing. I'm not a hateful person. People will tell me, oh, you're this, you're that. No, I'm not. I just don't like the fact that we're sitting here and black people are still behind and we have to sit here and be like, oh, well, no. I don't give a fuck if you're Somalian, if you're Ethiopian, if you're Nigerian. You're not Black American. Stop trying to compare our fight and our journey as yours because you know nothing about it. You don't know nothing about chains and whips. You maybe know something about colonialism. You maybe know something about tribalism. You don't know nothing about chattel slavery. So I get really bothered about that shit, and especially about Christopher Columbus. All growing up, I was told that he discovered America. And I always wondered, wait, how were there natives already here? So I never really, I never got the 2 and 2. I'm like, wait, that never made no sense. Then came out the I think it was 1862, the Dakota War. There was 39 Native Americans that were hung because they were defending themselves. It wasn't because of, that's the one crazy thing. We're never told the really honest truth. We're always told some fucking Disney story. And that's, the crazy thing about it, I think about this now too, because Snoop Dogg came out here last week and made a comment about he had took one of his grandkids to a Disney movie and he couldn't understand some of the things they were doing. But It's like, wait, Disney has always done that. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs? Like, come on, we were already being indoctrinated and didn't even know it. So how are we not being indoctrinated now? Because when you stand up for the truth, you're called a bigot. You're called a transphobic. But y'all niggas got nigrophobia. Y'all can call me whatever you want. I'll say this all day. You niggas got nigrophobia. And a lot of these white people do too. That's the whole crazy part of like, I don't understand. So I'm going to get into this because I'm really going to really, this season, I'm going to have some candidates for governor. I really feel like I got a good rapport, like back and forth with Tom Ebenstadt, who's running for governor. I know some people that are close to Philip Parrish. I think I can get him on. I know a Minneapolis independent, actually two. I know Laverne and I know Troy. And I know some city council members that I think that I can get on here because I am honestly trying to, it's not about Republican and Democrat, right? I don't want to make that about this. I want to make this about change. I want to make this about reform. I don't want to affirm it. I want to correct it. Because, so I'm going to get on to this, but here is remembering Ron Edwards.
Maybe at some point someone will write a manifesto or a book or something and really talk in terms of how hard it is for community to have the necessary representation to enjoy the First Amendment, if you will, and not find themselves blindsided by secret agreements and et cetera, as is rumored happened here about a year ago, that certain information needs to be suppressed, if you will, that there needs to be a control mechanism. See, at the point that the forces of nullification and reversal are able to close down the voice of the people, the First Amendment, and et cetera, this country is all through. It has no relevance whatsoever to anything that people have talked about and that many of America's sons and daughters died for, starting as far back as the Revolutionary War of 1776 and 1777 and all through the process. And so there are those that are newcomers to our nation as we move into the last three and a half minutes. There are newcomers to our nation that have not begun to understand the importance and the intensity of the battle to maintain free speech, to maintain opportunity, to bring forward, quote unquote, your point of view, your history, your hope, your dream, and et cetera. Man, that is a significant battle. And if you fail to understand it, then you fail to understand what democracy and free speech is all about. And so keep that in mind, my friends. In this edition, if you will, of the history of MTN, the importance of a free voice, a free society, an honest description of a dream. We got a lot of fake dreams that are taking place in this country under the current administrations and the power brokers that are running this country. But the most important dream is the honest dream, the one that is factual, the one that, quote unquote, has received the blessing of the sons and daughters of many communities who have come and gone in the battle for the continued existence and the presence of the First Amendment. Man, that First Amendment is so important. And so, again, I appreciate the opportunity from the leadership of MTN to ask us to step in and just give our history. As we said before, we are one of the signatories to the franchise agreement. And we were long before that involved in the battle to make sure that freedom of speech was a part of the great quote-unquote liberal dream. Again, we want to thank you, and to my colleagues and to the MTN family, thank you. Good afternoon and good evening.
You know, I always thought it was crazy because how I shouldn't say met, or even how Ron was brought to me, wasn't by any activist in Minneapolis. Well, it wasn't none of them. I had an back and forth with artificial intelligence, Jula Dora. That's how I came up on Ron. That's how I got to Johnny Northside. That's how I knew a lot about these community leaders. And some people are like, oh, how do you know it's true? What do you mean? Jewel always told me where the sources were at. I almost said resources. Where the sources were at. The documentation. Because a lot of people don't like to read. I know a lot of people say, oh, things in Johnny Northside are not real. That's not the case. There's court papers on this. On some of the things that are in Johnny Northside, there is actually court documentation. and I still don't understand it. I still don't understand it. You know, and especially about what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. It's going to be violence. I'm going to talk about our so-called leaders, but then I'm going to show, because remember, the root can't be good if the fruits are bad. You can't have good roots if the seeds are bad. Come on, why do we have community leaders like that? So that's what I'm going to really be talking about tomorrow. But this is about Ron Edwards today. And every start of the week for about the next 2 months will be about Ron. And I'm going to get in today about education. So that's chapter 7 in the Minneapolis story through his eyes. You know, and that's the crazy thing for me was, you know, even learning about Ron, I already had issues with the NAACP, Urban League. And then to find out he was the same way, I never even knew that. So it was interesting researching and then getting to know, rest in peace, but Ron Edwards. And I was blessed to know Mel before he passed away. You know, I remember the conversations that we had. I know a lot of people will say, oh, I don't care about what y'all say. I know what Mel told me. You can deny it all day, but then it makes sense when you start talking about Black lives, and then now it's all about trans Black, or it's about gay Black. It's never about Black trans, or it's never about Black gays. So I understood it more and more, even now, what Mel was trying to, and again, rest in peace. People are already trying to divide then. So, you know, that's the crazy thing, because the more and more I think about it is, the more you started to call them out and then show documentation, to show paperwork, they would try to silence you. They would try to silence you. You know, I remember being in Uptown, and there was a few of us painting. We were out there painting it. I think it was red, because there was a LGBTQ, I don't know, out there, but we painted it all red for Winston Smith. And some girls tried to jump Ashley. And by the grace of God, Gemini got involved. He didn't allow that to happen. It wasn't nobody else was trying to stick up for Ashley. And that's how I realized that not only did people not just envy and hate me, but it was the woman that I had around me that was making sure that I was good. And every time that I brought people up there, I always made they were good. Didn't matter if it was Shannon Kearns. Didn't matter if my probation officer at the time came to Red Wing when I was down there doing events. Didn't matter if I was going to Rochester. Didn't matter if I was going to Akron, Ohio, Washington, D.C., Little Rock, Arkansas. So, Chapter 7 about education, the corrupt and racist education system, poor schools for poor kids to keep them poor, clubbing the Cubs into inferiority and helplessness, stop the clubbing and teach skills, optimism, and hope, patience, and shuffle the cards, James Baldwin. As a school system goes, so goes a city. Cities rise and fall on the quality of the education they provide. Their future. Let me start over. As a school system goes, so goes a city. Cities rise and fall on the quality of the education they provide their future workers. That education is determined by how the government shuffles the cards of resources. And for those in the inner city who get dealt out of the game, we must create our own cards to win. While we continue to work for the big deck of cards to be shuffled yet again, and for everyone, including inner city blacks. I interpret the recent plan to carve out a separate corporate island downtown, which I discussed later in Chapter 12, a further indication that the people in power, both behind the scenes and out front, have decided to isolate the neighborhoods further, sacrificing them in their schools in the hope that circling the wagons around their precious downtown buildings will save the city by then relying on suburban schools and workers. The reality is that only education on one end and jobs on the other end can save the city, something which is not accepted nor appreciated by either the city or the schools controlling the body. The teachers union, based on how they allowed education to go downhill for minorities in the inner city, just as they allowed it in the terms of pay, benefits, and retirement in the suburbs. All groups, and especially minority groups, need an asset base. No group or person can succeed without human, financial, and physical capital. All of this is now being denied in Minneapolis city wards where minorities are concentrated. The struggle for schools to succeed is not about who is in charge, but about losing poverty's grip on the wards where the schools are. Schools in poor areas have fewer resources and a higher turnover of students, making improvement in their test scores more difficult. Add problems at home, and you have the need to completely change the model you use to instruct. Using a suburban model in the inner city is doomed to fail. Without providing all three groups, students, parents, and teachers, with the appropriate resources, students live without improve, nor will their education. I've experienced this the hard way. My own big turning point in high school came when I went to my guidance counselor to talk about college, who turned out to be a slave or to be a shove counselor. When I told him I wanted to go to college, he just laughed at me and said, "You want to do what?" And he laughed some more. He told me, "You'll do vocational, boy. That's what you were made for." In other words, no college, not for my race of people. He shoved me off the higher education track. Now we come to my favorite question. If this was said to me, how many more was it also said? And to how many today is it still being said? Followed by laughter in the kid's face, pointing a finger down, meaning lower goals. Indeed, white friends have told me that even their kids, if the counselor thought there was a problem, either with grades or behavior, laughed and said no, and shoved them in a non-college direction as well, telling them they were lucky that they were allowed to stay in school. In a phrase, this is how we club our baby seals, clubbing them into a sense of inferiority and helplessness. Of course, this helps keep them in place. And that's why I feel like we are, because so, I've always read about CSI and Minneapolis because it always came down to be like Jerry McAfee and some others or whatever, and there was L Flowers, and so I really got into that. But they didn't even see that people were running that program didn't even have high school diplomas, and it's like, how can you, as a leader, run something that you have no? I know that there's certain things I can and cannot do. So you can't tell me that like a Alfred Flowers, well, or a Stuart Peters don't do certain things, but yet people are okay with it. And it's like, why? Why do you call out some, but not all? Why do you not call out your buddies? And that's why, like, Ron's research and his writings have always brought me back to the 80s, 90s. And it's always, Ron, I can say that he was really solution based. And I look at a lot of the people now, and everything that Ron was calling out about certain groups are going on today. And it's crazy. So I was lucky. That's where I was at. And I want to show you something, right? Because this is something that I wrote up, that I've had written up about Ron. Because he talked about problems in Minneapolis, the NAACP, the Urban League, and BLM. It wasn't BLM at the time, but I put BLM in there because a lot of the issues that we have always been there. They've only skyrocketed and became worse because we choose to have chosen to ignore them, and hopefully they would get better, but that's not the way that it's gone, right? So his book came out in 2002, exposed what he saw as corruption and mismanagement in the Minneapolis NAACP, including misplaced funds, $86,000 in 2001 and 2002, and leadership failures. He criticized the branch for not advocating effectively for Black Minneapolis residents, especially on housing and redistricting issues that diluted Black political power. And that's really big in North Minneapolis. We don't have a lot of political power in North Minneapolis. We can say all day that we do, we don't. That's just the honest to God truth. I think the most, if you look at Ward 4 and 5, which has probably between 30 to 40,000 voters, that's not how many people vote. It's way under 10. And I really will keep it barely to about maybe like 5, because people really don't get out and make sure their voices are heard. And I really hope that's one thing that I like about Marvina, is because not only is she talking to old voters, but she's talking to people that would like to vote or don't know how to vote and want to vote. So I don't really see people that are just want to get ahead, don't really do that. And if they do that, it's for a reason. I don't really believe that it's for a reason for Marvina. I think she really wants change. And it's so hard in Minneapolis because, to me, there's a lot of leaders that are snakes. There's a lot of leaders that are snakes. And it's hard to trust people. Even probably myself, because I get told that they just think you're a Democrat operative. Like, what? Why do people think that? So that's where that lady came from with it. And I'm sure that people in Rochester have said that. I'm sure people in Austin have said that. Oh, he tries to be, I'm not trying to be anything. I never said I was Republican. I'm a Republican voter because that's basically all we have in Minnesota. I'm gonna say Minneapolis. In Minnesota, you have either Democrat or you have Republican. Even though I don't believe in a lot of this shit Republicans do, I really believe in my heart I have conservative views because that's how I was raised. That's how I was raised. I was raised with a mother and a father, a family nucleus, and I'm okay. Here's the thing of it is, a lot of people, well, you're just being hateful. No, I'm not. You already have the rights. If you're a white gay man, if you're a Black gay man, you choose to put that gay shit in front because it's already there for you. And a lot of people don't understand that is because people fight for that shit. And that's why I feel like Martin Luther King's civil rights shit at that time was probably a dream, but right now that shit's a nightmare. Because a lot of shit has been interpreted a whole nother way that it really shouldn't have been. And people are okay with that. That's why I like Philip Parrish. That's why I like Philip Parrish. I like somebody that's going to go up there and fight for the truth. Who's going to go up there and fight for the truth? Because a lot of people just say that shit, but they don't mean it. They say those words, but they don't mean them. So, expulsion fallout. His expulsion, likely 2003, per the 2005 MSR recap, stemmed from these public critiques, particularly in chapter 14 of his book, which detailed internal dysfunction. Edwards claimed the national NAACP put the Minneapolis branch in receivership 2003 to 2004 due to financial and governance issues aligning with his allegations. Broader issues, the NAACP's local struggles reflected a tension between grassroots activism and national oversight, with Edwards arguing the organization prioritized control over addressing systemic issues like police brutality and economic inequity. So that's the whole thing. I want to read just a little bit about so I had a BLM in here, right? So BLM emerged later post 2003. So it's not an Edwards 2002 book, but its Minneapolis chapter ties into the same systemic issues he addressed: police violence, economic disparity, and the lack of accountability. BLM Minneapolis gained prominence after a high-profile police killings, Jamar Clark in 2015, Philando Castile in 2016, and George Floyd in 2020. Critiques of BLM locally mirror Edwards' NAACP concerns, accusations of mismanagement, unclear priorities, and co-optation by external funders. Some including possibly, this is not me, this is me and Don Allen I feel like in my heart that we had a good talk. I've never, to be honest, I know a lot of things, Don's name comes up, but I never really honestly felt like he was a part of the problem, because I've always felt like when you read through this stuff, he's always been part of a solution, but they never went that way. They've always went the other way, because I feel like he's all about education and he wants to better individuals. And there was other people, because if they gave the money to Al and Bobby Joe Champion, those niggas are fuck ups. That's me. Those are my words, not Don's. Those are mine. There's some fuck ups. So why would you want to keep giving money to fuck ups? So if you keep on giving money to people that could possibly do good with it, you're not going to do, because they can make the change. And like Charleston White said, the only reason we continue to have crime in our areas is because of nonprofit organizations in our community that get paid off the violence. So if the violence goes away, they don't get paid. So they're never going to bite the hand that feeds them. Do niggas not understand that? Or is it that hard? Can people not put two and two together? Like, come on. If all the money, right, here in Minneapolis, I'll break it down, right? Because it's the same thing. If your education system is fucked up, right, how is it possible that your education system isn't? Because if your education system is fucked up, so is your city. Our city, Minneapolis, is so liberal. It's not even, to be honest, a lot of people say it's liberal. I don't think it's really like that anymore. I think it's more progressiveness. I think your people are so far, it's not even like left, it's far, left. And then it's the same thing with the right. It's the far right. You don't even have people that are either in the middle anymore, because nobody wants to compromise. Nobody wants to compromise. And that's why our cities, our communities are the way that they are. So Don basically, based on his political persona, argued BLM focused on too much on protest over tangible policy solutions, echoing Edwards' call for systemic change over symbolic gestures. Posts on X and web sources often highlight local skepticism about BLM's effectiveness in Minneapolis, with some claiming funds were misallocated or leadership was disconnected from community needs. No hard data here, just sentiment. But I really do think there's data there. I think people just haven't, just like even this morning where I had showed KSTP investigates, and what really should be public knowledge, they had to do so many data requests to get information that we needed as citizens. That should really show something when people don't even really want to expose it. I don't really think KSTP or even like Care 11, they can really benefit out that shit. It's more of that the digger they deep, they'll get awards. Even though it probably the same thing with like, and nothing bad against them, but like Ryan Faircloth or Deanna Winter or Lou Goose or Paul Bloom, the Thomas Hauser, it's all the same. The more they uncover, the more awards they win. I don't care if it's really, Tom Hauser and he's somebody that's really, in my eyes, a DFLer, because anytime anybody Republican goes up there and talks, he talks bullshit. And it's the same thing with a lot of these WCCO. There's no more bipartisan news. It's all either far right or far left. There's no more in the middle. Because you go to Alpha News, that's what I hear about in Minneapolis. Well, I don't believe Alpha News because every time they come out with an article, they always slander. Well, it's not slander if it's the truth, right? It's not defamation if it's the truth. That's one thing that I really learned going through Johnny Northside is that people would give that. They won't even send us cease and desist. Don't be talking about that because we'll just cut you off and nobody. So what? It doesn't work like that anymore. Social media has been able to skyrocket your message. They can skyrocket your message. You can get people involved in whole other states. Because I will tell you like this, you have more people nationwide than you have in your own community. I will be dead ass honest about that. But I really do think it's time that we go into our communities and we show them the truth. We expose it because they're being told lies. Right? So the common thread for all of these was across these organizations, the Minneapolis story is one of distrust. Activists like Edwards saw them as either too entrenched, NAACP and Urban League, or too chaotic, BLM, to address root issues: poverty, police brutality, house inequity, and political marginalization of Black residents. I don't see why a lot of people don't see that, right? And one thing that I really found, because I did go over a little bit of chapter 14, right? I read the whole book, but I really, every chapter that I really dug into. But chapter 14, for me, Edwards targeted the Minneapolis NAACP for failing to challenge city policies, redistricting the weakened Black wards, and alleged financial mismanagement. He accused local Black leaders of colluding with white elites to maintain power. Accused local Black leaders of colluding with white elites to maintain power at the expense of ordinary Black residents. What does that tell you? And his expulsion followed his chapter's publication as the NAACP deemed his public airing of internal issues a violation of their rooms. Why is that not wrong? I understand that we have a command chain, but come on now. It shouldn't really, it's somebody, that's why I don't understand it, because we call them people whistleblowers. Why should they be whistleblowers if they're just telling the truth? And because it's in your contracts or whatever. Well, you'll get fired or blah, blah. Why? Why is it every time that somebody that's doing the right thing is crucified and they're called this, they're called that? But I'll tell you, like, niggas that snail fentanyl or in their gang banging and all, niggas love that shit. Y'all love that shit. But when it's out here time to be really loving on our community, y'all don't like that shit. You guys like niggas that are dirty ass niggas. And that's what's crazy to me, because how can you be fighting for change if the niggas close to you aren't even changing? You're a bad leader. You have bad leadership skills. You have bad leadership skills. You're not a leader. You're a blind sheep. I was lucky, although my dad and his dad were railroad reporters. My mother's father, as I've said, was a doctor and an attorney. I was bound to study more, and I did. But how many did not because of being shoved out to keep them in their place? You do vocational, boy. That's what you were made for. Is there any wonder? Hold on, I want to make sure you guys can see this. Okay, you can. No, it's got a comment. I'll get to that. So Ben Yuko says, same things with economics, healthcare, and education. The more screw-ups we have, the more money they get. And that's true. You know, Trump came out over Labor Day weekend and said that he wasn't going to give funding for anyone that had trans or other kind of shit, because we only have two genders. I don't give a fuck what any kind of Democrat tells me. We have two genders. We have a gender reveal party. You don't be bringing, we have pink or blue. Pink or blue. The motherfucker, oh, that nigga so hate. No, it's not being hateful. It's the truth. And I will never understand that. So, yeah, that shit blows my mind. Is there any wonder why we are amazed when those who can escape do so? If there is any wonder that in Minneapolis, only 70% go to public schools, where south of the city only 50% go, and that only 17% of the black males in Minneapolis graduate. But to get a true flavor of this, let's first be a fly on the wall in New York. If this doesn't make you a true believer, nothing will. This is a mirror of Minneapolis and how many other cities as well. Let's listen in to the New York Supreme Court Appellate Division in Manhattan. Did you read or hear about the June 2002 ruling regarding funding for New York students in their education? The lower court had said that the state failed to provide a sound, basic education for the students, as required by the New York State Constitution. The appellate court overruled that ruling. And here is where the power of words is defining reality. The definition of the situation by one court was the exact opposite of how reality was perceived by the other court. And it was not a close vote, as it was 4-1 here, is what they ruled. What should make your blood boil? That the state of New York is obligated only to provide a minimally adequate opportunity. This is certainly not an equal opportunity. And how does this court of justice, the wearer of the blindfold of justice, define minimum opportunity? Very low, as you might assume. An 8th grade education, and get this, the court said that was already being provided. This means that the kids can waste the last 4 years in school and learn nothing. The state court finds nothing wrong with that. And isn't that one of the questions of Chapter 3? Who rules? Whose rule of law? The people's or the judges? The one dissenting judge wrote quite profoundly that this meant that the state had no meaningful obligation to provide any high school education at all. And it is to me, or are you scandalized that only one judge dissented? This lone dissenting judge noted the common thread in studies that show that to succeed in today's society and earn a decent income, a high school diploma is no longer enough. One needs a college diploma. He then went on to write that chronic underfunding, although intercept wait and interspersed with some years of greater funding, has also led to deterioration of school buildings, overcrowding, inadequacy of textbooks, library materials, laboratory supplies, and basic classroom supplies, and in some schools, even an inefficient number of desks and chairs. Change New York City to Minneapolis, and the same description applies. The appellate panel in New York legitimized that one author called the state of education and his death at an early age. This is what I mean by the clubbing of baby seals. Just like in Minneapolis, the state of New York will continue funding the polar bears, the wealthy suburbs, while it continues to club the baby seals of the city's public schools. In other words, the long tradition of wealthy suburbs while robbing the funds and thus the opportunities of poor city schools may continue legally. This means the New York State Appellate Court in Manhattan, all male, all white, has a different definition of fairness and of justice regarding who has to meet the state constitutional requirements and who does not, who the state has to be fair to and who it does not have to be fair to. For these judges, the schools serve the wealthy, not the poor. And now in education, it is no longer 2002 as the schools revert to 1702 or 1802 or 1902, when few were educated and the rest were considered uneducable and not worth educating. This is not how I define fairness or justice. In Chapter 9, I discussed the concept of minimum wage versus living wage. Here we get a new concept, minimum education. It has not been proven that workers cannot support a family of four on minimum wage, although the pretext of both private and public employers has always been that they can. But with education, we see New York ripping off its mask in a naked declaration, not only of power, but in a demonstration of how they would keep minorities in their place with minimal education, sufficient for the lowest forms and the lowest paid labor, but no more. That sounds like, what's crazy, that reading that little part right there reminds me of Tim Walz. How can people not say that? This man is supposed to be an educator, but then in the interview, he said, well, who's going to wipe my ass? The uneducated. That's what our education system is about right now. It's not a nation of thinkers, but a nation of workers. That's why our country is the way that it is. And a lot of people would rather look the other way than getting involved, because the hand that feeds them, they won't bite. They don't want to. That's the one crazy thing, right? A lot of people don't want to bite the hand that feeds them. We have to be okay as a society burning bridges, because some of those bridges are meant to be burnt. They're supposed to crumble. But a lot of people are too scared to stand on their own. They're scared to stand alone. They don't want to be the only one standing up for rights. Well, you would rather be with a bunch of motherfuckers that are blind sheep. That's not warriors. Those are cowards. Because when it really gets going, they're never there. Those aren't the people that are doing looting, that are sitting there setting buildings on fire. These are motherfuckers that are trying to start wars. Instead of trying to get as tangible outcomes, they protest, which isn't going to bring us shit. They yell at empty buildings when they're not even there. Senators, House representatives, the mayor, the governor. We yell outside of his gated house. We take over the street. We might even take over the state capitol. Some of us might be kicked out, but nothing changes. It only gets worse. And I hate that it always comes down to politics. Why? What's crazy is that a lot of Republicans will get told that they're transphobic or they're homophobic. And it's really not even that. It's that people, we have laws that you can't decide that if it's a choice. You just get to, it's already made. So all that person has to do, that's the one thing that a lot of people don't want to talk about, is that when you're born, you're given two gender, you're labeled either a male or a female. Now it's our choice if we want to change that. Because I remember playing cops and robbers, running through my neighborhood as a kid. But why are we playing cops and robbers when cops are out here killing the robbers? Make that make sense. You literally had white kids, not saying that they weren't playing cops, and some of them were playing robbers because it was that way. But when I really looked at it, some kids couldn't even be the cops because all they seen in their communities was the police beating up people from that community. So why would they want to be police? But then you looked at the white people. They always wanted to be police. Or niggas that never seen police do those things in their communities. They weren't doing that. They didn't want to be a cop. They were okay, I should say they were okay with being cops. They will make sure there is no chance for them to climb the ladder of social mobility. This also means that they are arbitrarily denying college education, just like on the plantation. All the schools need to do is prepare students for the lowest level paying jobs. That is all. As the 3 majority justices wrote, society needs workers in all levels of jobs. The majority, which may never very well be low level. The majority, pure and simple. This is using education to provide de facto apartheid, no access, no opportunity, and no hope. As their schools are more than 70% of a city's schools are Black and Hispanic. Then these judicial experts have singled out the Blacks and Hispanics by race to be the maids and the gardeners and service sector servants for the whites, as by the definition of these judicial experts. Blacks and Hispanics are not worthy of a decent education, as they are of little value. So club them. This is racism at its most blatant and most vicious, and it resides in Minneapolis education. The litmus test for such judges should be sending their kids and grandkids to these schools. Indeed, even many of the teachers who don't send their kids to the schools in the districts where they teach. A lot of people don't want to talk about that. They don't send their kids to the this is the one thing that I can honestly say, right? I don't know a lot unless they're out in the suburbs, because I know people that will go to North Minneapolis and be teachers, but they won't let their kids go there. It's just like with Joe Biden. Well, I don't want my kids taking no bus with no niggers. But then y'all motherfuckers wanted to go vote for the nigger. I don't even get that. That's like in the same thing with Kamala Harris. Like y'all love, that's why I call y'all house niggas. Because y'all love being slaves. Y'all love being slaves, and you want to make sure that the white man takes care of you. You don't care. It's the same thing with Vital and Jeremiah Ellison. They live in big ass houses in the better part of their neighborhoods, of their districts. You go to Vital's house and then you go over on Penn and you tell me, is there a difference? Because when I show you that there's a difference between the Theo Worth area and then you go over to the Jordan area, yeah, there's a big ass difference. They have better lights. They have better streets. They have more cleaned up streets. You could literally go 6 blocks and be over north near Robbinsdale area and think that shit is beautiful. That it's beautiful. It is. But when you look at the people, you see indoctrinated people. You see, this is the one crazy part, right? Because I know one of the police officers, Alicia, whatever the fuck her name is, she lives over there. There's some IBM, or not IBM, CEOs. This is all information that you can go on the GIS in Hennepin County and you can look at. This is all public information. So what you got to do is, if you really want to look and see who controls your city, look at what areas get the most work, get the most police coverage, and then look at the North Minneapolis, and then you look over by Ward 3 in Minneapolis. I shouldn't say Ward 3, Precinct 3 in Minneapolis, where Derek Chauvin worked at. Look in them two areas. Look in North Minneapolis, 4 and 5. 8, I can say 8 too. That's Jenkins, Mr. Jenkins. I'm not gonna say Andrea because that nigga's a nigga. He's a boy. We only got 2 genders, boy and a girl. Nigga, you's a man, Damon. Stop it. I don't understand it. These niggas is crazy. That's why I don't even understand most of these motherfuckers that claim they're pastors. You know we have 2 genders and y'all niggas out here, what kind of pronouns do you have? Nigga, what do you mean pronouns? I'm a boy. I'm not a he, him. I'm not none of that shit. I've already got enough labels you niggas like to give me. Y'all like to label me militant, a Democrat operative. Yeah, this shit trips me out. The litmus test for such judges should be sending their kids. I'm going to read this again. The litmus test for such judges should be sending their kids and grandkids to these schools. Indeed, even many of the teachers don't send their kids to the schools in the districts where they teach. So now we have come full circle with the Brown versus Board of Education. And only now the Board of Education is served. Not the kids, not as it was then, education for whites. Black who get educated do so in spite of the school systems. With a straight face, the Minneapolis school system calls the poor inner city schools, as reported with pride in the newspapers. They beat the odd schools, as if the game is for a few winners, as in a casino, rather than for everyone who walks in. It is another sign of the travesty which is being perpetrated upon innocent children. In casinos, the games are set so that the house always wins, no matter how much is won by the few, but always the majority of bettors lose. That is not supposed to be what happens in the schools, but it is. When Minneapolis School District says these kids beat the odds, the district is saying that they only expect a few kids to do well in their schools and are surprised when they do. How do you deal with that? By giving them a nickname, beat the odds. And these beat the odds schools, over 90% of kids are of color, and most of them are Black. Many affluent parents, Black and white, send their kids to suburban or private schools. Minneapolis schools are 90% minority, where 9 out of 10 kids are eligible for free or reduced lunches. Although Minneapolis school personnel would say differently given the results, I must conclude that these kids get clubbed by the adults who are supposed to be looking after them. And by adult, I refer to those in school buildings, those in the legislature, and those in the teacher unions, and those whites in their voting booths. The Minneapolis district's expectations are so low that if a kid makes it, they say he or she beat the odds. That's a travesty, in my view, leaving minority kids in public schools that graduate only a few minorities compared to whites who are truly able to read and write and do numbers is a form of child abuse. We have in Minneapolis plain and simple segregated schools, but worse, as it is accepted policy and is the result of policy, I have to call it apartheid. The press says we accept segregation. Yes, that's true, just as we accepted slavery. Minneapolis liberals postured with great piety against South Africa and demanded that anyone holding stock in companies doing business there divest themselves of that stock. And yet, in our own backyard, our own city, we do the opposite. We divest ourselves of the kids themselves of our future seed corn for the future. It never ceases to amaze me how few outside the Black community complain about this. We divest ourselves of our kids, club them, and then wonder why they wind up on drugs, in prison, or hanging out in the street corners. Not only unemployed, but unemployable. We have contributed, we have contributed to the short circuiting of their development. And then we blame when the blame is clear and shared by whites, blacks, and students alike. And although there is plenty to blame to go around, black and white, I am more concerned what blacks are doing to sustain poor education by supporting the DFL's education policies. How many young black men are dead or in prison who could have avoided that fate had we fought for education for kids rather than just more salary for teachers who had either already given up on our kids or never believed in them in the first place? What is in it for blacks when whites understand how the rigging of education is to work against their black students? And those white students who protest get my comments here and yet to refuse to look at the statistical variations and not conclude it is the education. We are just as bad, no matter how naive or well-meaning they are, as they too blame kids and parents then they are too noble and pure to ever have it be their particular system or approach. For these, blame is never for the schools. What other organization do you know, dear reader, that gets away with this kind of thinking? Well, okay, the state legislator and city council do, none of whom have to meet a payroll, as it is always paid by the taxpayer, where in a normal business, they would be fired for these results. What we have participated in is horrible. Poor schools for poor kids, divesting ourselves of our kids. That is what the education system is, a place to club the cubs. That means that the system has destroyed many kids who are young and defenseless before they have a chance. It starts with the system clubbing them. The statistics I cite should both alarm and shame you, dear reader. They should alarm you because kids are the seed corn of the future, and our abandoning them is the same as a farmer eating his seed corn rather than planted. The statistics should shame you because you have either bought into an abusive system that clubs kids, or if you don't buy into it, have nothing to change it. The cubs can't defend themselves and so get clubbed. The kids have no power. Those with power wield clubs. Where you have poor kids in Minneapolis, you have poor schools. Minneapolis has good schools for good economic areas, poor schools for poor economic areas. What more proof do you need? Rather than address the situation and change the status quo, the NAACP and Urban League are too busy prancing for being the first significant civil rights groups and are too busy upholding this miserable status quo of education by providing support for it, simply because they are Democrats. How much longer will Minneapolis allow the schools to be consumed by politics and controlled by special interests that don't put the kids first? Why did parents once think of Minneapolis schools as the best in the country, where today's parents are fleeing them? Because white flight has left the schools primarily black and poor. That's crazy because that's true. The National Assessment of Education reported in June 2001 that a third of America's fourth graders are illiterate, but the average disguises stunning divisions for Hispanic fourth graders, for whom the figure raises to 58%, and for Africans, for whom the figure rises to 63%. This is not simply the failure. This is a massive fraud. And in the economy that increasingly puts a premium on skills, the system is condemning too many of these children to second-class citizenship in the American dream. The nightmare is that the soft bigotry of low expectations is by no means confined to the teachers union and the school systems. It also implicates politicians and parents. The reading advocates at Achieve Minneapolis, the Minneapolis Public Schools Title I Department, note that in 2002, 70% of sixth graders at North Minneapolis schools came in reading at the third grade level. That's a big fucking number. That's crazy. Note again that the disparity between black and white. Note again that only 17% of black males graduate from high school in Minneapolis. You know, and I want to say this, right? You look at some of the top basketball players from over North Minneapolis, and where did they play? Besides Khalid Alameen and a few of them, they all have been it's either been private schools or it's been schools out in the suburbs. It's not really much North Minneapolis pretty much anymore, because a lot of people like to work in North Minneapolis High. The high schools, you know, Lucy Laney are some of the other ones, but they don't send their kids there. So why do you work in a district where you don't even want to send your kids? I know there's some, you know, what's crazy is I know more people that are para assistants and have their kids go to that district than I know more teachers that work in that district and their kids don't even go to that district because they don't live there. That should really show a lot of people, what are we doing? What are we doing? That is really a problem. That is really a problem. As a person's success or lack of success is life parallels his or success or lack of success in school. The high dropout rate needs to be condemned, not accepted, with a goal set of reducing it each year in 5% increments until the average is 5% or less, and then keep on working to keep on reducing it. School leaders who cannot achieve these goals must be fired. Start by telling administrators and teachers that we have changed the deal. All kids get taught how to read and write well, not just whites. If they don't follow suit, start firing these same administrators and teachers, and then watch how fast their replacements get the statistics to change. And because the education chain is 12 years long, K through 12 will be with the upper grades inheriting the teachers' failures of the lower grades, also allowing them more flexibility in over a 3-year period. In the first year, give the primary grades K through 3 one semester to show progress, and for the 12, 1 school year in the second year. Give K3 1 quarter, 4 to 6 2 quarters, and 7 to 12 1 school year. Finally, in the third year, we all just get 1 quarter. With any of who didn't make it work, let the firing and the replacement begin. Now, so many say how this could be done with a teacher shortage, and yet there are as many certified for teaching who are not teaching, as there are those who are teaching, as our colleges turn out more than our positions for that, with the right incentives, high pay for high performance and being fired for low performance. And the incentive would then raise teachers to do their best. Now, you might bring up the statistic in 1902, 1 in 10 U.S. adults, 10%, could not read or write, and that only 6% of Americans were high school graduates. But that was 1902. Universal education didn't exist. And the numbers fit everyone, whites included. Today's numbers show the great disparity, the still very separate and very unequal education provided to young blacks. Good education benefits everyone. It enables the workers to read and write and contribute and be citizens. For this reason, all need to be involved in education, including the private sector. The huge discrepancies noted above between black and white, 25% overall illiteracy test for fourth graders, which further breaks down to 63% blacks and 58% Hispanic. Shows that both white and black leaders, and especially the teacher unions and the DFL party, are more concerned about their power and their pensions than they are about their students and learning. The statistics speak for themselves, clearly showing who was getting the best education and who was not. Michael Cassidy made a great observation in writing about post-apartheid Africa. As a result of this past, they have a lot of catching up to do in the terms of education, training, and learning and how to function in a modern society as a whole, and as a part of the majority. The same applies for our own educational apartheid system. It cannot be solved in one generation, but it won't get done if we won't start now. And education is more than school learning. It is also about learning how to relate to others in their private lives, as well as participating in the public life of government, beginning with voting. But how can kids develop that sense if they are being clubbed? Martin Luther King Jr. acknowledged as much when he talked about blacks not being qualified, but they were qualifiable through education and training. The key is to get blacks, especially young black men, qualified by whatever training is necessary. And throughout history, people have sought dignity, respect, and recognition just as much as they have sought survival, food, clothing, shelter, and safe communities. The poor education provided by Minneapolis takes this opportunity away on purpose. It is way past time to change the purpose. And that is true. You know what I'm saying? Like, I really do feel like Ron was really onto something. And a lot of people really avoided him for a lot of reasons. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, for what? All Ron wanted was change. He didn't want to affirm. He wanted to make change. And I will never understand how we have politicians and we have some parents that would rather not get involved and allow what is happening to happen. I will never understand that. That is crazy to me. That is crazy to me. So, yeah, there's just so much going on right now in Minnesota. It's like, when are we finally going to stand up? When are we going to stand up and say enough is enough? When are we going to finally stand up and say enough is enough? Because it's time. It's time by any means necessary. And that's what I don't get. Right, by any training necessary. Right. I don't understand that, because I remember, a lot of people won't talk about high school or, and that's the one thing. When I was in Wabasha this weekend, because I was camping at the Pioneer Campground, I asked some older whites, is like, when was the first time that you ever seen a black person? And because they lived and grew up in small communities, they didn't see any black people until they got to the Army or until they got to college. That is a very, very, very big problem. So I will be back tomorrow, 10 o'clock a.m. That's my new time. And I will be getting into I'll post something later about an hour or two. But I want to show people, like, we need to make a difference, and we need to make it now. We can't just sit by and keep on allowing these people, our so-called leaders right now, who really aren't leaders. But yet we don't do much. That's the problem. We don't do much. We complain about it. Somebody asked me, what do you do besides just complaining about it? I have resolutions out here. I have a strategic racial equity action plan in Red Wing. It's not the problem is that white people run it. That's why there's no teeth in it. I tried to put teeth in it. What's crazy is I had to fight for that resolution. I had to really, 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 really fight. I had to really, really fight. And they made me take some words out. They made me take some number figures out. These are all white people. There was no black leaders. These are all white people that I had to work with in Red Wing. And, they had a racial equity plan. It was called GARE. I was like, wait, what? But you looked at the GARE squad, whatever crew, whatever commission they had, it was mostly all white people. They had one black lady on there, Beth Breeden. And it's like, damn, really? Really? Because that's the most whitest black lady I ever know in my fucking life. And all respect to her daddy and even her brother as being the first black mayor in Minnesota, Craig Morris. But those niggas are house niggas. They're not field niggas. Those are people that want a title so they can keep on being in the house while the rest of them look at us like we're in the field. So with that being said, man, I want to get up out of here, and I got some Don Tripp, Ignorance is Bliss, and I will see y'all same time, same place tomorrow, and I'll be up out of here.
Ignorance is bliss, nigga. Ignorance is bliss. No days off until we wealthy. Sorry, I'm so self-centered, it seems selfish. I'ma go and help myself before I'm helpless. Cause can't nobody rescue me. Escaping all my demons, now I feel just like a refugee. At war with myself, you know what bothers me. The fact that even if I win, I lose a part of me. Before I lay me down and sleep, my soul is not negotiable. All I know is C notes. I could be a vocal coach. Pip, you rip my heart away. How the fuck I'm supposed to cope? How the fuck I'm supposed to keep my head up down this lonely road? I didn't cry when my dad died. My anger wouldn't let me shed a single tear for a stranger. Not now, not ever in life. You never supposed to say never, but I just said it twice. Am I supposed to take my cake to feed my mama's face? If so, what do I take to make my daughter's plate? How I'm supposed to ensure my kids' futures are bright? If I gotta pay my mama back for giving me life. I mean, even if I could, she couldn't give me no price. I'm giving mama all I had and it still doesn't suffice. I bought my mama a Benz, it cost me 50K cash. She told my brother she ain't want it, cause it ain't come with NAV. I invest in myself, and then I share with my folks. Ain't dropped no album in 2020, because I went broke. I had my head above water, another sip and I'll drown. Took every dollar I had to put Piff in the ground. I still had to survive, I still had to provide. I had to swallow my pride, I had to borrow from Smiles. Then my granddaddy paid.